From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live, the show where you get to ask the questions to today's top composers. I'm happy to have you here.
A musical accompanist to Bette Midler, a pal to Billy Crystal, a muse for the great Rob Reiner, putting on a show for Hairspray and Some Like It Hot, and the guy trying to sell a tune in broadcast news. The New Jersey native MARC SHAIMAN has seen and played a lot in his 66 years. More than enough to finally write the high and low notes for his autobiography, Never Mind the Happy, Showbiz Stories from a Sore Winner. Told in his delightfully droll voice, it's a pilgrim's progress from the clubs to the big and small screens and the Broadway stage that will delight Shaiman's many fans when it comes to a composer whose long career defines the description of show tune, a gift from melody and gab that now takes on its most personal form in print.
And now here's a composer with a musical life to tell, MARC SHAIMAN. Welcome to On the Score.
Hi, how you doing, Daniel?
Well, it's great having you here.
You know, Daniel, I should be better at reading comprehension. Are we actually live, like being broadcast out there live?
It is live. It is live. Don't do anything embarrassing. I might do something embarrassing. My pets might do something terrible.
I'm sorry I was a minute late. I'm sorry.
All good, man. It's just great to have you here. I mean, what in the first place made you want to write an autobiography? Was there some kind of like light bulb that went off that made you want to do this?
One of the light bulbs, I mean, a few light bulbs, you know, I would write because I'm old, I'm on Facebook, and, you know, I would write whenever a movie or a show reached an anniversary or something, or, you know, unfortunately, if someone passed away, I would have a story and I would write the story. And so people would constantly say to me, oh, you should write a book. But then I also, you know, I see them say that to someone says like, oh, today my kitten knocked over the tea kettle. And, oh, you should write a book about the things that go on with your kitten in the tea kettle. So I took it with a grain of salt. But eventually I started thinking I could write a book with all the things that have happened with me. And then I was listening to a podcast, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast, Wiser Than Me, where she talks to women older than her, older women, to get their wisdom. And Jane Fonda was on talking about her memoir. And she said that she felt it was time to take a life review. And that just stuck in my head. I mean, I remember I was driving. I can even see myself taking the exit to go home when she said it. And I think I was in the middle of a disappointment, showbiz disappointment. They come and they keep coming. And I just thought, you know, even if I kind of thought this subliminally, that if I did a life review, I could maybe cheer myself up to remind myself of all the wonderful things that have happened in my life and the incredible opportunities I've had and iconic movies I've gotten to do and moments I've gotten to co-create with wonderful people that have brought other people a lot of joy. And it would be good for me. It was like something I should do for myself, and not just in a tooting my own horn way, but just remind myself, you know, all this stuff. So I think that's it.
Now, when you set out to do this, were there any particular autobiographies that you like reading that stood out for one reason or another?
Not in particular. I certainly have read a lot of memoirs and of composers, great titles like Henry Mancini's Did They Mention the Music? Great title. And Andre Previn, No Minor Chords, which was, someone from up above decided for a movie score or something. No minor chords. So I'm not putting myself in Andre Previn or Henry Mancini's place in the firmament. But I do love memoirs because I'm a stupid guy who isn't well read, and I haven't read the classics. My reading, it's to it's a shame. My level of reading. I would love taking off all time and just finally diving into classic books that I've never read. But now I'm an author, so who would have thought?
Did you I mean, I can sometimes barely remember what I ate yesterday. I mean, how do you remember what you want to write about, especially if you're going way, way back?
It just starts coming to you. Most of the things I'm telling, if they're worthy of putting in the book, I remember them because they were big life-changing experiences. And some of them I've been telling, they're stories I've been telling for years. So, and then you find, I've heard this before, you find when you start writing, you start remembering more. I also, asked friends to remember things. And, I went to, I discovered, here's a good thing about the internet, newspapers.com. I don't know if it's newspaper or newspapers.com. But they have it's like the old movie, like a spy going for the microfilm. I put my name in like New Jersey, 1972 to 1977 or something. And all these articles, like when I was a kid playing for community theater, there was an article for when I played for Cabaret in Plainfield, New Jersey, about this kid is a prodigy. He's playing without the lights on. He can play it in the dark. That was the heading of that article. But I was able to put everything in chronological order, and then the reviews for cabaret acts that I did in the late 70s and early 80s, and the shows that I did in the 80s that started getting reviews, and then when things really took off, even there, getting all the chronological, and then it would make I'm still remembering things. I'm still thinking of, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't put that in the book. But there's just so much you can get in there. The writing was almost easy. It was the editing. The editing was the hard part.
Well, and what you just said, we have a question from Louis Versalini, who would love to know what didn't make it into the book that you would have liked.
A lot of people's names, the people who are such a big part of my life, I cannot believe their names aren't in it. For instance, one person for Broadway is Christian Borle. I've done Smash with him. He was in Some Like It Hot. I've done so much with him, and his name is not in the book. I can't believe it. Luckily, he sings on the audiobook. I was able to kind of correct this mistake. And other friends, dear, dear friends, are a big part of my life. But when I chose to focus on a project and the stories that seemed the best to tell, that sort of gave an overview of the project, sometimes I bypass certain people who've worked with me. Snacky, Brett Pierce, the music editor I work with. I don't think Snacky's name is mentioned in the book. I can't believe it. So it's just the way things went. And I wish I had time, because when the deadline came up, they were like, Mark, you must submit the book today. That's it. I wish I had, my publisher didn't want to have an index for whatever reason. Oh, that nowadays they don't do indexes or whatever. It's more pages or whatever. If I had an index, maybe then I would have gone, oh my God, I can't believe so-and-so is not in it. So it's people. It's people who are an important part of my life. I don't know who's going to be more upset, people who are in the book or people who aren't in the book.
I can personally attest to the greatness of Snacky Pierce. He is truly, truly awesome human being and a great music editor. I became aware of you, through, it's kind of like, it's almost like essentially a one-off score, which was your first score for Misery, for, Rob, whom we all miss, which brings us to our question from Omega Man. What was your composing process like with Rob, especially on such an unlikely first score like Misery?
Yeah, I talk in the book about the fact that Billy Crystal asked Rob what he was thinking of doing for the music for When Harry Met Sally while they were filming. And Rob said, I need a guy who knows like every song in the American Songbook, who can help arrange, maybe we'll use records or maybe we'll use recordings, and can just figure out how to segue from one to the other and knows. And Billy Mensch that he is, said, "Have I got a guy for you?" Billy would call me Rain Jew because I somehow know every song. Yeah, I know. Yeah, oh, that's a Rodgers and Hart song. So I went and met with Rob, and I brought my Rodgers and Hart songbook that I've had since I was a teenager. And I said, "There's a song that Rodgers and Hart wrote that would be perfect for this movie," having just read the script. It's called "I Could Write a Book," ironically. And the last lyrics are, "Then the world discovers as my book ends how to make two lovers of friends." So it's like, "Hey, Rob, isn't that perfect?" He was like, "You're hired." So on When Harry Met Sally, I got to learn how music is placed into a movie and collaborate with someone and think, "Oh, it could be in this key or this tempo. And what do you think?" And then when we brought in Harry Connick Jr., that was a whole nother level of communication and collaboration and figuring out how to work with someone who had their own strong ideas about tempos and key signatures and rhythms. So me and Rob working with Harry, I tell the story in the book of the first day Harry came in. I had worked out everything, like like I said, what rhythm the song had to be in what key, because I knew it had a segue into like an Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong song recording. And Harry was a little like, don't tell me how to play or what to play. What? And so that first day with Harry and his trio and me and Rob Reiner, it was a Todd A.O. that used to be over there on the Radford. I think it's all gone now. But that was a little eggshelly that day. And I remember saying to Rob when we were all done, I was like, "Mondays with an orchestra, it can't be like this. Like, we have the orchestra and the clock is ticking and we can't sit and discuss all day, especially tempos and keys. I have written orchestrations." And that was my day where I finally got to write a Nelson Riddle style orchestration, because I knew there was a spot in the movie where they had placed that song, "I Could Write a Book," so that those lyrics would be at the perfect spot when we see Meg and Billy. It couldn't be there or there. It had to be there, which means we had to start there and be at this certain tempo. So I was a little on edge about, oh, how is this going to go? And I was conducting, and Harry Connick Jr. was in the booth. The vocal booth was behind me. I couldn't see him. And so we said our pleasantries in the morning, and then it was time to get started. And bop, if they ask, and we started. And in that moment, oh, by the way, yeah, I'm at a piano here. If you didn't, he started singing, "If they ask me," and the trombones were doing the chords I wanted, and the strings were doing a beautiful pad, and whatever had happened on Friday dissipated in forever. And me and Harry fell in love at first sound. And that was just the greatest experience. And anyway, that's When Harry Met Sally. Cut to Rob calls me and says, "Hey, buddy, my next movie's Misery. It's a psychological thriller. You want to do it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but I don't know that I can do that." If he had said, "My next movie is about vaudeville and burlesque," I would get why someone would think, "Yeah, he's the perfect guy for that." But I was like, I had just gotten Richard Kraft as an agent from When Harry Met Sally and Beaches. And Richard said to Rob in the phone call to negotiate, "This is my agent." He said, "Rob, what makes you think Mark can do this?" And Richard said, "Richard, did I say Richard?" Rob said, "Richard, talent is talent." And Rob just felt that was how Rob felt. And he had this faith in me, and I had no choice but to try to live up to his faith in me. On that movie, I learned to love a temp score. I learned to hate a temp score, but they had temp scored it almost all with Jerry Goldsmith. So I had this master class in writing for a psychological thriller. Now, I can't imitate Jerry Goldsmith. I am not on the level of Jerry Goldsmith. No one was on the level of Jerry Goldsmith, but I was able to listen, and it was like a college course that I never took about composition and orchestration and how they're so completely related. and how the strings could be doing one thing and then the lower strings are doing another, and the woodwinds are up there chirping like, in a chicken hen, and all these different things can be going on to create the texture of film score. And I did my best to learn from the master, from the temp score, and do all I could. But I remember I did trying to be Hitchcockian as well. And the first thing we hear when James Caan is finishing writing the book, and we hear, and in my mind, I'm a Broadway guy, so I'm misery. And I can't remember now the chords, figuring out these odd chords, things I had never writing for the musicals I'd been trying to get on in the 80s. But I just did my best, and Rob was liking. And as I write in the book, an orchestrator conductor named Dennis Dreeth was my savior, because I was writing it all on a piano into a computer and orchestrating as best as I could with the very rudimentary orchestral sounds that were available at the time. I mean, really rudimentary. And Dennis figured out how, and I wrote it all out, but I had to figure, this is a 5/4 bar. That should be a 7/8, but fermata. I'd written in a way that was not necessarily the way you could put it in front of an orchestra and get it played right away. So Dennis took my scores and figured out how to write it for the orchestras. So every note is mine, but Dennis Dreeth reconfigured it to be playable, sight read by an orchestra the way I learned it had to be done. They sight read it. Oh my God, they don't even really have to rehearse. They're unbelievable. They sight read. And so Dennis Dreeth saved my ass, and misery would have been true misery if I had not had Dennis Dreeth in my corner.
Well, he's the dude who scored Dolph Lundgren's Punisher movie and did a great job. So you were in good hands. Now you're going to be you're going to be at the Academy, I think, on Thursday, showing with Bette Midler.
Friday. Yeah.
When you're up Friday for the First Wives Club. I was lucky enough to write the liner notes, the extended scores on La La Land Records. And for me, I think one of the best cues you've ever written is like the 5-minute apartment chase sequence as they're running around. Yeah. What was the trick to doing that particular cue?
That was another temp score. I'm not ashamed to mention temp scores as helping to guide. And I have a million stories as how they were like the bane of my existence. But I believe the editor put like operatic classical music underneath that. And that inspired me to go listen to a lot of opera overtures that have a kind of whimsy to them. So they're not as dense as classical music can be. They have whimsy. And I just took that, I can't steal from these greats, but I can understand what's going on enough and apply it to my own talent of what's in there. And then I had a ball writing that cue. Oh my God, it took forever. And then Jeff Atmajian, doing the brilliant orchestration, and then putting that in front of the orchestra was a thrill, and they really enjoyed it. That was thrilling. That was just great. I loved it.
Yeah, and it really, for me, goes to show how your scores really are showed. They're literally Broadway musicals waiting to happen. Maybe Ghost of Mississippi isn't. Maybe it is, but
no. I remember I had lyrics to City Slickers. He's hot shit with a pistol. He's Billy Crystal. If he gets pissed, he'll shoot you dead. So in my mind, it was all, I always did think, if this was a musical, what would this character sing for their introductory song? And a lot of my themes kind of trickled down from my way of thinking like that.
Did you essentially see yourself on Broadway before you even saw yourself as a film composer?
Yes, very much. I grew up, my first love was Mary Poppins, and that soundtrack, that was my foundation of the education of how to communicate through music and lyrics and orchestration. Irwin Kostal being as equal to the Sherman brothers for the creation of that timeless, perfect soundtrack. And then I got into community theater when I was like 13 and just did one show after another, being with all adults, being this 13-year-old at the piano, being a musical director to adults, and learning from the Broadway piano conductor scores where you get the good chords and you get to see trombones do this and flutes do that. And then when I moved to New York, I wanted to write musicals, and I did. I wrote with my partner Scott Whitman stuff and with other people, but nothing became our big break. And then just when I was still in the midst of trying to get my big break, Billy Crystal, I worked at Saturday Night Live. I started getting called to come up to Saturday Night Live if they had a musical idea. And so I became friends with Billy Crystal and Martin Short. I mean, how lucky was I that I was in New York at that time getting the call when those two worked there with Christopher Guest as well, that one glorious year. And at the same time, I'd been working with Bette Midler since I was 17. My ultimate dream of working with Bette Midler when I was 13 and 14 and 15. And then through a fairy tale moments of being in the right place, I was in the right place in the right time to suddenly be working with Bette Midler before I even turned 18. And then when her film career took off with Touchstone, like it was kind of the second chapter of her film career after The Rose, she said, I need some help. I'm on this movie Big Business where I have to yodel. My character yodels in front of a steel band on the street. Can you help me? I'm filming it on Monday. And I went and I helped her with that. And then that character also is introduced in the movie Milking a Cow, singing a song. She slid down the mountain on her little lay-hoo, which is an old yodeling song, but we rewrote lyrics to create it to be about the story in Big Business. Anyway, that was my big break into movies, along with being at the same time, just by a quirk, getting cast in broadcast news, where me and my friend Glenn had this crazy moment being overeager news theme writers. But it was a great icebreaker. When I was suddenly out in Hollywood working on Big Business, I'd walk in a room and people were like, were you in big broadcast news? It was a big hit at the time and a prestigious movie to be in. So it was a great icebreaker. And then I had the temp score nightmare of all time on Big Business. I don't know how long the podcast is, so I don't know if I need to make all these long stories short. But I learned of the double-edged sword of a temp score on Big Business in the bad way. It was on Misery where it was a great help later on. But I don't even remember the question that is led to the story.
You've gone on a wonderful way. What was the easiest thing for you to write in this book and the hardest?
It's a good question. I wish I could. I don't want to say easiest makes people think, you didn't work on it, but it all flowed out of me. It was stories I've been telling, wanted to tell in a fuller way instead of just like a 4-paragraph Facebook post or an Instagram post. It's got to be like this. I just wanted to give all the spices and the colors that were in these stories, because I have, I look back on it and it's just amazing. I mean, I know some people would be very happy if they had like a third of the career that I've had the blessing to have, and the longevity. I just cannot believe how lucky I am that I am one of these people who have, like Bette Midler or Billy Crystal, Rob Reiner, who just longevity. I realize the bizarreness of using the word longevity and Rob Reiner, due to what has happened. But boy,
yeah.
Anyway, so sorry to have lost my train of thought on that one, but
I think everyone kind of did. I absolutely loved Some Like It Hot. I thought it was just wonderful, and on Broadway. and obviously Hairspray. You really seem to have hit it in terms of, Mel Brooks certainly showed you could do an amazing film to Broadway translation with producers. What was the trick of that? Especially like Some Like It Hot, or these films where they weren't necessarily your material, but you kind of make it your own, and then even Hairspray gets turned into its own wonderful movie.
Right. Well, those two projects are very different stories in that Hairspray was a movie that had around 20 minutes worth of plot, but an hour and a half or change of charm, of John Waters' charm, of how he was telling the story and the great characters he created and the great actors portraying it. And we had to create more plot. We had to create more, make it more in depth. The cliche that's true is when a character sings in the musicals, because what they want to express that can't be just expressed by talking, they have to sing it. So we had to create a lot more to the musical Hairspray than is in John Waters' original film, plot-wise. Some Like It Hot is a very different thing, where we had to take a brilliant movie that is 2 hours or however long it is worth of the most brilliant dialogue and performances, the top. I just realized I went ahead above my laptop screen. So in that one, we had to address these themes that are so current about gender, and not just to make it be a joke about a guy in a dress, but find ways to do that without being anachronistic. We moved it to the 30s, which was a chance to make it a little different from the original film. We found ways to make it different from the film so that people would start to recognize right away, okay, they're not just recreating the movie, which had already been done. There already was a musical called Sugar that very much is like the movie, exactly, but with songs. So we found new ways. The producers came to us and said, we think Sugar should be black. That was the thing that first attracted us to doing it, because at first we were like, it's too iconic. We're not going to fuck with Some Like It Hot. Are you kidding? But when they said Sugar should be black, we were like, well, that's fascinating. Now, she won't be like Marilyn Monroe. The audience will get right away it's not Marilyn Monroe. And it will be like, oh, like Ella Fitzgerald or Lena Horne heading to Hollywood, wanting to break through and create someone on screen, like in a song that we wrote for the show. She wants to be a movie star so that a little girl like her in Alabama can go to the movies and look up on the screen and see someone like herself, like she had not gotten to. So that was enriching the character. And also dealing with gender and the Jerry/Daphne more than in the movie, realizing, my God, I'm feeling more at home. I feel more myself than ever. But meanwhile, the movie was brilliant. Jack Lemmon is loving being a woman. And Jack Lemmon is ecstatic when he gets proposed to by Osgood. So Billy Wilder was just brilliant. And the title alone, Some Like It Hot, it perfectly says in 4 words, the theme of it all. Some like it hot, some like it cold. Some like a man, some like a woman. Some like the bottom, some like the top. Some like spaghetti, some, like Chinese food. It's whatever you find, you grow up and you learn what you like, and you should just embrace it. And you should not make other people have to like what you like. Just love what they're love. Just why is there such a trouble with this idea of embracing what people have discovering who they are? So we had to do all that and still make it funny and still hopefully please the people like ourselves who love the movie, one of the greatest movies of all time, but create something new. Blah, 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 blah.
Well, you did a great job with it. I just thought it was just a wonderful production. I have to ask, it really seems that the music, that score, and I have to let my dog in. I don't have a piano, I have a dog. He's got to come in. There he goes. You've written so many wonderful Oscar-nominated songs, and it really seems now that the Academy, the Globes, have a kind of just general who cares attitude towards music. And last week it was announced that only 2 of these songs are going to get performed on the show, which seems more, to me personally, more than a bit of a slight. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, if you read my book, you know that the the prologue and the epilogue of my book I used my experience on Mary Poppins Returns and the fact that that happened with us. And I say that was the moment where it proved the thing that I always say. On Tuesday, we got nominated for the song and the score. And on Thursday, we found out that through the trades that they were only going to have Kendrick Lamar from Black Panther and Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper from A Star Is Born. You can understand the star power of those two songs. But by saying they weren't going to include the other three songs, they were saying those other three songs. And this is, and making this decision as people are about to be voting in a competition, by the way, that I never asked to be part of. If I loved competition, I wouldn't have cut gym class and gone to the auditorium to play the piano. So, but as I talk about in my epilogue and my prologue, little did they know what a dog with a bone I was. And I was like, yeah, you think? You know, first we fought it and they kept saying no. Well, I was like, just through the luck of the draw, I knew Bradley Cooper. Not real well, but I had his email address. And I knew Kevin Feige because at a moment just weeks before this at the Oscar, at the governor's ball, someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, Kevin Feige would like to meet you. And I was like, Kevin Feige would like to meet me? Meanwhile, my husband, a Marvel nerd, wasn't with me. I couldn't believe it. I was meeting Kevin Feige and Lou wasn't with me. Kevin Feige is a film score nerd. So I suddenly had Kevin Feige in my phone book. Well, I wrote Kevin Feige and I wrote Bradley Cooper. I explained what had happened. They were the producers of these two movies that were getting their songs. They both agreed this is unfair. I was not privy to how they did it, but 2 days later, the announcement was made. We're going to do all 5 songs. So the superpowers of Bradley Cooper and Kevin Feige, I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, God, I would love to see that because the Academy is more often than not made pretty insane announcements and then backtracked on it, and I'd really
especially about music. Yeah, music-wise, and the music branch is also equally as confused. If you go through the history of the music for the Oscars, the different titles of different categories, and they're just always you know, there's just why they can't just let it be like, let the members use what they know is what they thought was, quote, the best, and vote for it, not try to like figure out the wording and the rules, the endless amount of rules that change year to year. Anyway, sorry to go off on that rant.
No, I could rant about this myself. I mean, that like a 20 degrees separation question is that one of the injustices to me was Howard Shore not getting a nomination for The Aviator. And I think when people think of Howard Shore, they think of, his work with Scorsese and with Cronenberg, but he actually was instrumental in the sound of Saturday Night Live. You worked on Saturday Night Live, which I don't think a lot of people know.
Why wasn't Howard Shore
experience like?
Was Howard Shore not nominated due to some rule or what?
I think it was pre-existing music that was in the, if I'm correct, and I might be wrong, that there was music.
Yeah, I know they have a ratio, a certain percent has to be. And even that, I mean, Beatrice Straight is famous for the actress who won Oscar for supporting role in Network, and she's only on screen for like 10 minutes. How do you? It's all apples and oranges. It's all insane. Anyway, you were asking about Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live.
I was working around New York and the cabaret scene and stuff, and luckily, after Howard Shore and Paul Schaefer left the show, they didn't have a funny Jewish guy at the piano. So, like 5 years after they left, I started getting that call to just come up freelance if someone had an idea. And then that glorious year with Billy Crystal and Martin Short and Christopher Guest. And that changed my life with my relationship with Billy and Martin Short. I've done 1 million projects with them now, all born of those wonderful days of just going up to SNL and laughing with them. We barely ever got anything on the show. We were just laughing at life and having a great time.
Were you actually in the writer's room?
Yeah, I was, first they called me up as an arranger, but as an arranger on a comedy show, you're helping to figure out what. And then I worked full time there for a year, and I think the second year, I don't know if it was full time, where I actually, it was my first job. It was maybe my mid to late 20s at that point, where I actually had to go down to a woman behind a glass thing with an opening and get a paycheck. Like, actually every Friday, go get my paycheck. Everything else had always been, here and there. Yeah, I worked as a writer there a full year, and I have that history with Saturday Night Live and being able to go back to the 40th and the 50th anniversary shows. The other night I did Seth Meyers' show, and they were all agog backstage at Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers included. That Lorne Michaels came down to say hi to me and to say how proud he was of me, which is very sweet. And they were all like, he comes down for no one. He don't come down for anybody. They couldn't believe. That made me feel very nice, because it's a very small part of SNL, and the stuff I did on SNL hardly gets shown because of music rights. So I don't get rerun as much. I'm not on the internet as much. It gets scrubbed from the internet, but I am that's part of my history, and I'm very proud of it.
Well, what's your favorite skit that you got on?
Oh, definitely. I worked with, we co-created recurring characters called the Sweeney Sisters. And that's the essence of what I'm talking about, where it's not, they don't rerun them a lot. It's hard to find them online because of the music rights. There's one, though, that luckily was our peak moment. The Sweeney Sisters, they were a lounge act that did endless medleys. And the Christmas Bell medley is the one that is online, and I post it every year. And it's hysterical. And you can see me playing with all my head of hair. Some people feel I was featuring a mullet. It's an unintentional mullet. I think if you want a mullet, you really say, I'm going to have a mullet. I did not want a mullet. I just had a lot of hair. Had being the operative word. And so the Sweeney Sisters, that's the big thing. And then I worked on that Sweeney Sisters sketch was on the William Shatner Christmas episode that had the classic Shatner at the Star Trek convention sketch, where he says, "Get a life." And it even opened with something, once again, that they never show, but it was me and Al Franken wrote new lyrics to the Ballad of the Green Beret. Let's fighting soldier in Vietnam. We wrote new lyrics about Oliver North and the Iran-Contra scandal. And it was the opening of the show and got good laughs, and it was a really well done piece. So that night was my best night at Saturday Night Live for sure, until the 40th anniversary, where the after party, where I got to play for Paul McCartney, Taylor Swift, many other people, and then Prince. It was just a jam at the party, and I got to play for Prince and Paul McCartney. I saw her standing there for Paul McCartney.
No, certainly one of my favorite things you've done. And a Lengard would love to know, Mark, I'm a big fan of the South Park soundtrack, both the songs and the score. What was your experience working on that film?
Glorious, glorious. Scott Rudin, who I'd been doing a lot of movies for, and a lot of movies that had moments that were almost like musical theater. Not almost, I mean, Sister Act. The Addams Family had the Mamushka, where I got to write with Comden and Green, classic comedy, musical comedy writers. The First Wives Club ends with a musical number, like out of the blue. And so he called and said, Trey Parker wants the South Park movie to be a musical. I think you're the perfect guy to help him realize his vision. Now, meanwhile, Trey Parker doesn't need anyone helps to do anything. He's absolutely the genius, that word that gets thrown around a lot, genius, and yet such a wonderful guy and so funny and so collaborative. So I was brought on to write additional music or lyrics if needed. Sometimes they weren't needed. I did not write Uncle Thugger, but I did do the fart tap dance break. That was my brainstorm. So I got to put my stink on it, as we say, or my stank on it, as musicians used to say. And it was the ultimate experience, getting to co-write music and lyrics, arrange, orchestrate, sing. I'm the voice of one of the boys in What Would Brian Boitano Do? I am all the voices of the round the world trip that is taken during Kyle's Mom's a Bitch, which Trey Parker wrote for the TV show, but we put it in the movie. So my input on that was the round the world idea, and all those voices are all me. It was just when I had started getting a computer and you could digitally change the pitch of your voice and all. And I said to Trey Parker when we were doing the actual recordings, I said, "Oh, I can't wait to watch the chorus, that I have coming in, do what I had demoed for the round the world trip." He was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. We are not changing that. We are sticking with what you sent." So it's all me in there. It's insane. It was the greatest gig ever. And it is these project that put my name back in the mouth of Broadway types. And just my good fortune was that the woman who bought the rights to create a musical of Hairspray was asking everybody in New York, who should I get to write Hairspray? Who has a comic sensibility of John Waters? And it was when the South Park movie was out, and everyone kept saying to her, "Get Marc Shaiman, get Marc Shaiman." So South Park on its own would have been the greatest gig ever. And yet it led to my ultimate dream coming true with writing the Broadway musical Hairspray, co-writing the Broadway musical Hairspray.
And Blame Candid is definitely one of my favorite song performances at the Oscars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As far as Oscar performances, that's just amazing that happened.
What would you say were the big things you learned about writing an autobiography, doing this book?
Say that one more time, Daniel.
What would you say were the lessons you learned about how to write an autobiography from doing this book?
Oh, I've never did it before, and I don't know that I'll do it again. I just know that I tried to be honest. I'm a narcissist, as anyone could tell, and part of that narcissism, I think, is being honest. It's like even if it's a bad thing about myself, I still like to talk about myself. Joan Crawford in a movie called Torch Song has a line where she's a big Broadway actress, and she says, "If the talk's about me, I'll buy a ticket." So I just wanted to be honest. I mean, why do it unless you're honest? I didn't want to be mean to anybody. I mean, there are a few moments, of course, in the book where things happened to me that were hurtful. A few mistakes I made that were hurtful to others, and I'm honest about them. And mostly I just wanted to keep people entertained or moved or feel like this is something I've realized afterwards in talking in podcasts like this or interviews. I realized I didn't set out to write an inspirational book, but I think it can be, and it is, because look at this story of just endless opportunities that if you show up and you give your all, I know I sound like some kind of football coach, but that every dream can come true if you believe in yourself. Once again, sounds like a cliche. It is a cliche, all these things, but I believed in myself. That is a gift from God, besides the talent of music and lyrics, is having that faith in myself. I don't, where does it come from? But I had it. And so I guess I had the faith that my story was worthy of putting down on paper. And I'm lucky that a publisher raised her hand and said, "I want to publish this book."
I'd say we all are. Now, Louis would love to know who gets to play you in the movie version of the book.
Well, I am friends with Nathan Lane, and just the other night we did one of these live in conversation moments. I think he's older than me, so I think he's outgrown the part. We once with friends used to play a game of who would play you in a movie, and my friend who's a casting director, David Rubin, who became president of the Academy at one point, he had a good idea of Oliver Platt could have played me in a movie. So I don't know. I mean, it's been 50 years I've been in show business now, and I'm 66 years old. I started when I was 16 in show business. And then a film script that has been written, a bizarre asterisk to my life, I wouldn't call it my career, is that I was one of the small little group of 4 people that started the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's something I was happy to get to put in the book. And it's just a bizarre chance that we were walking by the theater. We made friends with the people online. We went in and we saw this funny movie. We went back the next night. And then one guy, Louis Faris, I think that's how you say his name. He was a kindergarten teacher from Staten Island. He's the first person who, when Susan Sarandon is walking in the rain with a newspaper over her head, he yelled out, "Buy an umbrella, you cheap bitch." And everyone started laughing. And me and my friend Sal, we were like, we got to, and we were all sitting together. And then we were like, what can we say? And the four of us became like 5 of us, then 6 of us. And we would start going back every weekend. And we started this phenomenon that still goes on to this day. Bizarre. Anyway, it's just an endless amount of fairy tale moments.
Man, I'll tell you, when I saw
and moments end with, witches and bad spells and, bad moments, but they're all in there, and I've survived.
It's funny, when I saw Sal Pero in Fame, the movie with the whole Rocky Horse, it's like, oh my God, someone actually knows about this in a major film. I mean, wow. I have a crazy idea, having, Ethan Hawke. I mean, dude, Blue Moon. I mean, that's an amazing, he shows he could play anybody. I vote Ethan Hawke.
I hope someone makes this script. They wrote a script called Creatures of the Night that's about me and Sal and the others creating this phenomenon. It's kind of fictionalized, but not so much, where there's an actual Marc Shaiman character who is like Oscar Levant used to be in the movies. If anyone listening, watching is, old enough to know who Oscar Levant was in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, he was always the piano playing sidekick, the acerbic one, so that's my character in that film script. I hope that gets made one day, because it is a great story about, like, letting yourself go, and, as they say, let your freak flag fly, and just becoming who you want to be and having a great time doing it.
I would totally freak to read that script. I would love to read that script.
Every few years I hear it's getting made, and then something happens and it doesn't get made.
So for our wrap-up question, Omega Man would love to know, what future film and show projects would you like to create or collaborate on?
Well, Omega Man, I noticed this is at least your second question. Now that I just said what I just said, someone asked me to direct a movie a few years ago, and I was like, I never wanted to direct a movie. I couldn't have that kind of command. But, now that I just said what I said, maybe I'm going to see what's going on with the rights to that Creature of the Night movie. Maybe I can, could I produce a movie? Could I direct? I don't know. I never thought of myself as that way, but maybe that's something to do to get, to do something different.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I want to see you direct the Rocky Horror origin story.
Maybe.
Mark, I just want to thank you so much for joining me at Film Music Live. Never mind the happy. Showbiz Stories from a Sore Winner is now available in bookstores and online outlets from Regalo Press. A big thanks to our producer, Dale Turner, and graphic designer, Mark Banning, and I'll be seeing you on the next Film Music Live. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Daniel.